Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Stephen King podcast. This is bonus episode number 30, and I have with me today, writer, musician, Jackiem Joyner. Hello, Jackiem. How you doing?
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for inviting me here on the podcast.
You're most welcome, and thank you for taking time out of your schedule for appearing on this lowly little self-produced podcast. It's always interesting to talk to writers. I'm always really jazzed about talking to creative people about their creative process because everyone does it differently. And I think it's just a really interesting exploration when I get to talk to all you writers and creative people. So it's really cool.
Well, we love to talk back.
That's good. That's why I just like to ask some questions and sit back and go on autopilot and let you guys spill the beans on how you get it all done. So let's talk a little bit about yourself. You're a saxophonist, jazz saxophonist. Is it just jazz you do, or do you do other types of music too?
I do jazz, I do Latin, I do classical. Whoever's paying the most.
Okay. But you do session work too then?
Yeah. I do session work, but for the most part, I do contemporary jazz, and I'm an artist with my own name. So most of my albums, I have 8 albums, and they all have my name on it, which is awesome, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. Good promotion.
Yeah, but so contemporary jazz, saxophonist.
You're also a writer, so it'll be interesting to find out how that got going for you.
Yeah. Kind of happened by accident from touring so much. I get a little restless backstage, waiting for sound check or at the airport. So I'm reading a book by James Patterson or David Baldacci or something, and I might have a critique or something like that. And I've been critiquing stuff for years, and then something just said, "Hey, maybe you should write your own story, and then let others critique it."
That's right.
So, and I love science fiction because, I love space environments, futuristic worlds and, Star Wars, Avatar, Transformers. That's like my kind of thing,
Awesome.
I started writing. I said, hey, just start writing something and just go, and I just started. I didn't know how to write. I didn't know like what should come first. Write my own music. So I kind of have a blueprint on how to write a song, but how do you translate writing a song into writing a story or an outline, So I just kind of used those skills and said, okay, well, just do it really quickly. Like when you do a song, just write real fast, just put a bunch of dirt on the paper.
Awesome. Okay. So let's go back a little then. When you're just starting out, you started out, I guess your primary passion was music.
Yes.
And did you have formal education? Like, did you go to any sort of art school or musician school? I don't know the path I'm not as familiar with music as I am with writing. So I don't know what kind of path you took to get where you are today.
Well, actually, I was in college because I wanted to be like an engineer. So I was in college, College of William and Mary in Virginia. I'm from Virginia. Mm-hmm. I live in Los Angeles now. So just after high school, I was in school and like, okay, yeah, it would be nice to be a chemical engineer. So that's what I was starting for college for 2 years, but not for music at all. Always practicing and learning things on my own. The training that I have as a musician was from being in high school band and things like that. My music teacher would take me out to play some gigs with him because, I had some talent. So he was like, hey, come, you want to make $100 when you're in 11th grade? 1997. I mean, that's like, a lot of money. So
right.
I did that. And and that was really cool, but when I was in college, I was asked to go on tour with Marcus Johnson and Bobby Lyle and Ronnie Laws and Gene Carn. I was in my 20s. I had no clue who they were. Supposedly they were important people. But hey, I sounded good enough to play, so they let me share the stage, and I was like, oh man, this is really cool, And then there's college, and then there's like going to these weird cities in Miami, and I'm like, man, I don't know, maybe I want to do this.
Right.
And then cashed in my chips in school, and I took a risk and went full time for music.
Wow. Are your parents artistically inclined in any way?
My father was actually on tour as a guitar player and a bass player.
Okay.
Long time ago. It's not anything I really know, but he was, a musician and played guitar. I remember him playing his guitar on the every day on porch and stuff like that too. So, so and I didn't think I was ever going to be a musician, but hey.
Right. Right. So where did the interest in science fiction come from?
Going to the movies all the time.
Okay.
Hearing the sounds and the bangs and just just really being floored by the movies. I love the movies, and I always just started to gravitate towards science fiction. I love space stuff.
Right.
Space stuff, like when the new Star Wars came out, episode 1, when that was so amazing, and then episode 2, and it's just the graphics and the characters and animal-like characters and communicating with the animals. I just really was intrigued by it. So, and that just led me to watch more stuff, and then I started reading. So, and then that was when I started touring, which happened a few years later. I started my first tour was an official tour. I was in college. I think I was 21 at the time.
Right.
And that was my first time experiencing touring as a saxophone player with other artists. I signed my first recording contract in 2007 after moving to Los Angeles. So much has happened. I mean, it's like, I could go on and on and on.
Right.
Really.
Prior to you touring, were you much of a reader at all then, or?
I wasn't. I didn't start really reading until after I put out my second album. 2008. That's when, because I was touring so much and it was just boring, and eventually you gotta pick up a book and read. I mean, I'm glad I did,
right?
Because man, I tell you, man, I dug into some really amazing stories, and I love Mary Lou. She's just an amazing author. Like what she does with the teenagers and her fiction is really, it's more of a fantasy kind of a thing. But I also like David Baldacci because I love mystery and crime and stuff. So. I just started going into all those stories, and then I said, hey, I'm gonna start. Maybe I should start my own story. I was thinking of a character, and I wanted her to be like this badass female who's like knows how to flip and do amazing things, but she's like on another planet, and she has like a flying skateboard and communication module on her eye, and I just went all out with it.
Wow. So you have quite the imagination, I guess.
Yes. I don't know. There's some people call it ADD. I don't know, whatever you want to call it.
Interesting. Okay, so you have no real formal writing training then. You didn't take any English courses or writing courses or fiction courses or anything like that?
I didn't, I mean, obviously I use YouTube to figure out how to put together outlines and things like that, and reading and just blueprinting my book like other books that I enjoyed. Obviously, my editing was horrible, and I probably spent most of my money on the editor.
Right. So I'm guessing because, and forgive me if I'm pushing stereotypes here, because with jazz music a lot of it is spontaneous, I guess you could say. I am assuming your writing is of a similar nature then? Are you a pantser or an outliner? Are you familiar with those terms? Or?
I'm more of a pantser because
that's what I thought.
Yeah. I mean, I can outline, if I'm forced to. And I've done it more lately, but I love to just kind of just sit down and just let my mind just go. When it comes to writing music and writing songs, it's kind of the same thing, but I had to develop a discipline because I wanted my songs to go to radio, and you gotta have structure in your music when it's going to radio to a broader audience. So I've been fortunate to have written 2 #1 songs on the Billboard. My first #1 song was I'm Waiting for You. That was #1 for 12 consecutive weeks on the contemporary jazz chart. And then the second song was Take Me There. That was 6 weeks #1 on the Billboard chart. So I figured out how to make all of that craziness make sense to your ears.
Right.
And I guess I took that into writing and say, okay, we got all this stuff here. Let's organize it. Let's make it make sense to someone who's going to read it the first time. So that was the first book, Zarya. And, it took a minute to write that one because obviously it's my first book, first shot. So, I mean, I was doing it on and off while on tour. So, it took probably 2 years to really get it done.
Right.
So.
And that was book 1 in a series, right?
Yeah, that's book one, and working. I've already started writing two. Well, it's probably going to be broken out into shorter series. Book one is a full novel, 500 pages. But after that, I think I'm gonna continue the story as a series rather than a big, massive novel like my second novel, Minor Assassin.
Okay. Just a little more on your creative writing process. So you said it took you like almost 2 years to write your first book.
Mm-hmm.
Are you including all the drafts and everything that you had to go through, or?
Yeah. I think Zarya, I wrote that probably 3 times, maybe even 4 times. Just rewriting it.
Mm-hmm.
And during the process, I did send it to 2 editors that I had that already were published, and had many stories out. And they were kind of helping me with some things during the process. But when you rewrite it, it's amazing that the story just becomes more,
right.
You think that, even your second draft it could be cool, but when you go back and you rewrite, it's like, wow, this is really turning into something, and you're able to kind of put things together
right
during the rewriting process. I would say the first draft, that's like the scribble draft. The second, I think I'm mainly trying to make sense of everything I wrote, and then around the third time, I'm really anal on everything. I'm just going through the story point by point and really being mathematical about the process. So and all of that kind of takes time, because I use a software called Scrivener to help with keeping everything organized, and that really has helped with having the notes just in case you forget something that you need to answer in chapter 14 or something.
Yeah it's a great program. I'm quite familiar with it. Do you have beta readers or anything like that? Or
yeah, I did hire a few beta readers for hired 2 beta readers for Zarya, or 3 beta readers for Zarya, and then I had 2 different I had a line editor and I had a copy editor, 2 different people. And that going back and forth with line editor, that took a pretty it was a process.
Right.
I mean, because, they were really helping with the structure and different things like that. So, but it also taught me a lot too, being my first story. And I really, by just getting the feedback and really on watching their process, like, wow, okay, so when I go into the other stories, it was a lot cleaner, so. Yeah. Right.
So, I was just going to ask you that, how did you find writing your second book then, once you'd gone through it once?
Yeah, well, I had already started once Zarya was done. It was, and it was out, and you got to put it out. No more drafting. It's done. It's all done, and you put it out and let everyone tell you what they think about it. I had already started drafting other stories, and Minor Assassin was one of the first. I've got 2 or 3 others that I just really, when my mind goes, I let it go, and I just draft what the idea of the story is going to be. I had already drafted the idea of Minor Assassin shortly after Zarya came out.
Okay. And what's your elevator pitch for Minor Assassin?
A young teenage boy through tragedy learns how to fight, and unfortunately he becomes a killer because he wants to have revenge over those people who harmed his family. So it was a home invasion through human traffickers. So he hits, they take his sister away, they kill his parents, and he stays in he's hiding in a house while all of this is happening. Fortunately for him, the people his parents worked for found him there, whips him off to Japan. He learns how to become this amazing fighter, comes back to Las Vegas to find his sister and have revenge.
Okay. And is this near future or present day, or?
It's a present day, but I've added some sci-fi cool stuff in there, like a motorcycle that he's going to be on in Las Vegas. He has a mechanical hand, and because he loses his hand in training. So, and that's used as an EMP to turn off electrical systems inside of the casinos so that he can get into his targets. He's also using, he's like espionage, so so the person, one of his trainers is in his ears all the time with telling him where he needs to go with the blueprints and different things like that. But, mind you, he's only 13.
So
so he's 13. So when these gangsters see this kid come and they're like, hey, get out of here, kid.
Yeah.
Belong in here. And he's like, yeah, I kind of do belong here, and I'm looking for my sister. You know where I can find her? His attitude is more of he's not here to really harm you unless you don't give him his answers. And so he's kind of like tied between two worlds. And then all of a sudden he remembers the time when he was hiding in a pantry and his parents got killed. And next thing you know, he snaps it and he's taking out these big dudes.
Right. Right. So this is interesting. Your character is 13 and generally that would be classified as a YA. Mm-hmm. But with the subject matter that you're talking about, is this considered YA or is this an adult novel?
I would say it's an adult because it's got violence.
Right. Like
there's blood. But at the same time, it's a clean story, but the scenes can be pretty graphic.
Okay.
Some of the scenes can be pretty graphic, and I don't know, that could be off-putting to some people. But when you consider that those people that are being harmed are people that delves in human trafficking and different things like that, and maybe your sympathy can kind of go out the window. Right.
For sure. Okay, so is this Minor Assassin, is this a series or is this a standalone?
This is going to be a series, but it's going to be other characters because when he was training in Japan, there were other students from all over the world. Okay. And many of those students come from Germany, Africa, and they had their own tragedies. So I'm working on stories for other characters. One character, her name is Akeo she's from Kenya. She's a girl, and she's roughly around the same age as him, but she's about 14. She's going back to her home place in Kenya where there's different things that is going on, and she becomes the the minor assassin there.
Oh, okay. I'm seeing a common thread through both your books here. Your protagonists are both fairly young teenagers. Is that just happenstance, or is there something about that attracts you to write younger characters?
That's an interesting question. I think it's kind of organic. I don't think I was really trying to, but there could be something in my subconscious mind that's there that I haven't really thought about, that just exists. I mean, I'm also in the process of writing another story but this story is adult. It's in the real world. It is science fiction, but it's real world. It's, it's about clones and it's lots of science that's involved. And this is a female, but she's a news reporter, and she finds out that they were cloning humans in New York City. Okay. So, but that's cool. More of a real story, but it's also science fiction with the devices and different things like that.
Okay. So now let's dial in or try to bridge between your two disciplines here. Do you use tools from your music background in writing your stories? Is there much crossover? I think you touched on it a bit before, but yeah, I don't know how to phrase the question properly, but I hope you know what I'm getting at. Like, is there much crossover between those two for you, or do you find you have to get in a different mindset when you're doing music versus writing?
My first book, Zarya, it was messy because, I never written anything before. So I just started writing. But when I got into Minor Assassin, I felt that I was using the same muscles that I was using to put together an album, together a book, except for chapters versus song. So, and I'm good at putting together songs and putting together albums. Right. I felt that I was in the same creative space, actually. I really did. And it felt, all the energies felt the same, the imagination. It was just that I was just using my typewriter, or not typewriter, but using my computer instead of using my horn. And it's so interesting how that seemed to help, actually. I really feel that being a writer of songs actually helped with writing the stories and also putting things together more logically, because obviously in an album, there is a beginning and an end, and there is, a climax, and there is how you want your audience to feel when you're writing a song. It's like, okay, so what is the purpose of the song or the purpose of the album, and what am I trying to get them to understand within the first three songs? Right. When it comes to writing a story, it's, what emotions do I want them to feel in the beginning? What do I want them to know? What do I want them to anticipate? So for instance, with Minor Assassin, it's a very emotional intro because he's a smart young 8-year-old, and he's real, he's got a great relationship with his parents. There's no trouble in sight, lives in a really amazing home, beautiful family, and all of a sudden it turns into tragedy. So, right. And so that's so within the first 3 chapters, you get this normal kid then this horrible tragedy that happens that really transfers the story into another place, almost kind of a sad place. But then it goes to him growing up in Japan and becoming a different kid.
Right.
He's a young African-American kid, and there's in everything that exists with being in Japan and looking different, and even the people that want to train him and didn't really want to train him. And so there's a whole story there before he even comes back to the United States. So it's all about the emotion and drama. And I think I kind of used the way I put my album together, that's how I put Minor Assassin together. So I say Minor Assassin was much more structured than the first book, Zarya. That's my opinion, at least from the perspective of a writer.
Right, right. Yeah, okay. Was Minor Assassin, was that written mostly on tour, or were you already into the COVID shutdown phase of when this book was being written?
I started writing that while I was on tour, but I really got it done because of COVID, actually, believe it or not, because I think if I was touring extensively in 2020, I'm not sure if I would have been able to go through all of the processes, the editing and all of that stuff.
Okay.
So since there wasn't a lot of time, since there was a lot of time, I said, hey, let's finish Minor Assassin.
Right. Okay, that's interesting, because I was going to ask then if writing while you're touring versus writing while you were at home was different, and obviously for you it was. And because a lot of writers want to create like a writer space, but when you're on tour, you kind of have to write
everywhere.
Wherever you are, right?
So
Yeah. So how did you find that? Like, did you listen to music then or something, or how did you block out the world when you were doing that?
It's really hard to block out the world when you're on tour. But you have to, one of the things you learn from flying every weekend is how to create your own space on an airplane.
Okay.
Whether it's with the headphones and getting into your own zone, because you're right, there's so many distractions. And but what I found, that when it comes to the crazy ADD part of my mind, it works much better when it's on tour, because it's like, it's chaos.
Interesting.
And I can just really delve into it, and writing, just write whatever. I would say like a first draft would be great to be done on tour. But when it comes to hey, let's make this make sense for, your general reader, would be better done at home.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. So you mentioned that when you started out, you started looking at a lot of YouTube videos for writing and that. Was there any particular channels that you found very helpful?
Geez. I've saved so many different channels from different authors. I wouldn't know some of the name of them, but some of these aren't like the big time authors, but a lot of them are
self-published or mid-list.
Yeah, self-published authors, and they really have a good following, and they're really giving out really amazing ideas. Unfortunately, I'm not able to give anybody a shout out right now because I can't think of any, but I've saved tons of videos.
Okay. Yeah. Because I know for myself, there's I don't know if you know Brandon Sanderson.
Yeah. I've checked out a few of his videos as well.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got because he lectures at university in Utah. I believe it's Utah. If I'm getting it wrong, don't get mad at me, people out there. But he has a couple of channels where he's basically recorded lectures over the last couple of years. And plus he does that Writer's Excuse podcast, which has been going on for 15 seasons now. And they're very short, but they have a lot of good guests and they talk about a lot of different topics. So I highly recommend that to any writers listening.
I've been through several of Brandon's videos on YouTube and saved many of them. I'm actually subscribed to him.
Okay. So your career, especially as a musician in these COVID times, it must be very difficult for you. Are you doing anything remotely with other musicians, or is it how are you handling that?
This obviously was totally unexpected. I wasn't, my last show I was on tour in the end of January in Jakarta, Indonesia, and Taipei, Taiwan, and also the Philippines. And I had a whole tour for the year, was already ready to rock solid for 2020. I landed, was it February? I think it was probably February 4th. I barely landed in LA because we would have been quarantined because we flew through Taipei. And after we landed, it was like the world changed in February. Yeah. And it was like a different world. And it's luckily I made it back in time, or else I would have been stuck out there in Asia because, it was they were calling it the China virus and whatever. So, but I made it back. and just show after show was canceled or postponed. Really big shows too. I mean, festivals that had been around for 20 years.
Right.
So everything just fell like dominoes. My next show was in October, which was a social distancing concert in Seal Beach. And that worked out nicely. It was about, it normally holds about 200 people, but it was only 50 because all the tables were spread out and they would only allow 50 people to come. But that was my last show. So it was like the Asia tour in the beginning of the year, and then the tour in October. That's all I had, So that was a huge change for me and many of my friends in the music industry. We're now looking to 2021 to hopefully get things back, to normal, maybe in the summertime, maybe late summer. I don't think anything's going to ever be back to normal.
Yeah, I agree, unfortunately. And we'll just pray to God that some other virus doesn't pop up in the meantime, because who knows? It's
terrifying stuff.
Yeah. So from a musical point of view, it sounds like it's been pretty devastating.
Oh no, that's just the worst thing that could ever happen. I think in the music, I can't think of anything that would be worse than this happening. I mean, I know people who've been toured with J-Lo and all those big tours, and none of those tours are happening. And if you're just, say, like a guitar player or bass player, and you just play the background music and that tour is gone, that's it. That's like, that's your lifeline. I mean, luckily for me, I've written songs that are on the radio, so I collect publishing and royalties and stuff like that. So, so for the most part, that's where my income came from having not toured.
Right. Okay.
And books, of course.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have an agent? Are you self-published, or do you have a contract, or like how are you getting your books out?
Well, I am self-published. I created a company.
Okay.
So I am self-published through my own company. It's my same company for my music. I've assigned to a label for the past 13 years.
Okay.
And then after my contract ended with them, I started my own company. I just felt it was better for me. I kind of understood the business. I was already connected to my audience. I knew who they were. They know who I was. So I just said, hey, just do your own label. And I decided to put my books under the same thing. And the great thing is that the people that are buying my music also buying my books. So, if I go on tour,
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah, they're buying it all the time. I mean, like, I have a store set up. Even today, I sold a couple of Minor Assassins, and from my store, I have to ship them out. That's the only thing, to sign them and ship them out, because they want you to sign them.
Right.
Of course, you can get it on Amazon and different things like that. But it's kind of cool to be able to see that. I mean, I may look at a publisher possibly for different stories, or so. I could be like self-publishing on certain stories, and then it could have a general publisher for another story. Who knows? Yeah.
And how did you find the whole self-publishing exercise? Was it something that you were able to get a handle on fairly quickly, or did you make any mistakes?
Oh, I definitely make mistakes. For sure.
Well, tell us about them, because that's what we like to hear.
It's for one, like, even the timing of prints and the timing of publishing on Amazon, you think that you can just, okay, the book is done and let's get the cover done. And then you say, you set the date, you set this arbitrary date, but you don't realize that it takes a certain amount of time to get everything to all the stores. So next thing you know, you told everyone that there's this date, and next thing you know, it's not on Amazon yet. So, or it's not on some other platform. So, you really have to give yourself the time, even when the book is done and the cover art is all that stuff is done. You really have to say, okay, so let's just not give everyone the release date right now. Let's just get the thing done and then do a release date. And that way everything gets distributed everywhere at the same time, and people aren't, upset with you. So that was one of my big mistakes.
Right. So did you have to learn about formatting?
Yeah.
All that fun stuff.
I hired people to do the formatting because, it was just really hard for me to pay attention. I was like, I did try it. I was using, what is this, Calibre? And then there's Reedsy has a nice one that I thought was really nice, but I just couldn't stick with it. I was just like, I'm not going to learn this. And I just closed it, and I just, I went on Odesk and searched for formatters, and then it was like, you got to do all the margins and everything, the size of the book, 5x8, 6x9. I was like, this is just, what is going on here?
Yeah.
So, and then you say, okay, I need to add this or I need to add this. And then, the guy's like, well, okay, then we need to change the size of your book because technically if you add 3 pages, that adds this millimeters of whatever the crap. It changes the size just from adding a couple of pages. But okay, great.
Right. Okay. What about the covers? Because I'm looking at them and I have to say the Minor Assassin one really pops. That's a pretty fantastic cover.
Yeah. I had someone named Rika Brex do it, and she's done hundreds and hundreds of covers. And I looked at all of her covers, and I found her. I think I found her on Odesk, and I was amazed by her covers. Like, wow, those are really great, And was wondering if I wanted to have the boy on the cover or not. So now it's like you can't tell. This a young, someone young, but you don't know like what it looks like. So his head is kind of pointed downwards. But I like the way, we have the Japanese and American flag there. Yeah. And then the Japanese words in the background, which basically means revenge.
Oh, okay. And he's wearing a mask. Was that just coincidence?
That's a coincidence. Actually, that was a total coincidence. This did not happen during COVID. It was a total coincidence. Okay. So
that's pretty cool.
Actually, I didn't think about that. Yeah, he is wearing a mask. Jeez,
you were prescient. Yeah, you were seeing into the future. So that brings up the big question, of course, now with COVID around, is that affecting your writing and I don't know, maybe even your music at all? Or like, how does that working out for you?
Well,
or how are you dealing with that?
For musicians who tour, and I love to be on stage, it can turn you into a term they call studio rat. That's the one who lives in a studio and the little refrigerator and cot there and it smells horrible.
Yeah, it's like a rink rat in Canada where they're always at the hockey arena.
Yes, exactly. You get it. But I've always was as an artist. I had to wear 2 hats. One was as a performing artist, and then also the hat as a producer and songwriter. Not everyone writes songs and performs the songs. So, but I wore both hats. So I was already used to the process. But with the more time that pandemic threw on me, I was able to really get deep into my other passion, which is writing stories. So I started a series called Time Lab, and, it's a real short series that's out too. And it's about 2 scientists that are working together. One is from the time of Caesar. Another one is an idiot from the year 2018. He's a college student, brilliant idiot who loves alcohol. And people don't believe his theories. They think his theories are just whatever, that he's crazy. His mother was this big time scientist, but she blew up the lab, got a lot of people killed. So now they think that he's just some rich idiot. And he meets with the scientist from the past who was working on a device because he was about to get killed from King Caesar because they called him a witch, and all of the science that he was doing from Egypt and everything, they were just, this is dark magic or whatever. But he was like, no, this is real science or whatever. So they brand him as a witch. He gets out just in time and he finds himself in San Francisco 2,000 years later in San Francisco, where he meets Kyle, who was drunk when he meets him. Kyle just thinks he's just seeing things or whatever. So because he's drunk, he had probably 8 shots of whatever he had. So he's like, whatever, cool. Right. Some lightning is going on or whatever. And hey, come to my house. Let's talk.
Okay.
So
cool.
So that's that series.
All right. So that's Time Lab?
That's Time Lab. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And is that a book? Or I'm sorry, short stories? Or
it's a series. It's a series. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And actually, episode 1 is currently out right now.
Okay.
They're working on a time machine. That's basically what the 2 are doing.
Ah. Okay. Very cool. I think that's all I got. Questions about your books and whatnot. So, is there anything that hasn't been brought up yet that you'd like to mention at this point? Or
actually, that was Time Lab. I'm glad I mentioned that.
Okay. All right. Very cool.
And if people want to follow me on Instagram, at Jackiem Joyner, JACKIEM JOYNER. You can go to my website, jackiemjoyner.store. And then you have all my books there and my music. Hey, maybe you can get into some contemporary jazz and,
All right. All right. Very cool. Well, I want to thank you very much for coming on, and I wish you all the best in your future projects. And hopefully this whole, COVID situation have some sort of sense of normality shortly, and you guys will be able to get out touring again.
Yes. That is a hope.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, you take care and enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming on. Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yep. Bye-bye.